I'll pick it up. Travis. I'm ready.
That movie that we just showed you the preview of is American Sniper. If you haven't seen it, well, it hit the box office not too long ago and has already been nominated for 6 Oscars. Well, it's a story about an American sniper and his life and the fact that he suffered from PTSD coming home from fighting in Iraq. And what ensued after is causing some controversy amongst Hollywood types, both the left and the right. Let's take a look at some of the tweets that have come out about what they're saying about Hollywood and this particular issue, notably Michael Moore, no stranger to controversy. My uncle killed by sniper in World War II. We were taught snipers were cowards. We'll shoot you in the back. Snipers aren't heroes, and our invaders are worse. And then Newt Gingrich got all excitable about this. Michael Moore should spend a few weeks with ISIS and Boko Haram. And then he might appreciate American Sniper. I am proud of our defenders. And of all people, Hanoi Jane, who apologized for that not too long ago, just saw American Sniper, powerful, another view of coming home. Bradley Cooper, sensational. Bravo, Clint Eastwood. Well, we've got a couple of angles that we want to take on this. So to do that with me, I'm joined by Jim Slotak, who is our media critic at Sun Media, and Dr. Cal Bricker, who served in Afghanistan, went on 3 different tours, and of course is a captain in the Navy. Jim, I want to start with you, just purely from the Hollywood angle of this. It seems that it's not necessarily even partisan lines where the portrayal of Chris Kyle, the sniper that came home. It's more about this. Some view that this is a glorification of what a sniper does. You've seen it. You've
Sure.
been critical of the movie.
I've seen it a couple of times now.
So. Tell us what's at issue here.
Well, I think the Michael Moore line at issue is what is a sniper. I mean, if it's your sniper, it's a different story.
Sure.
I'm sure most soldiers consider the other guy's sniper to be cowards. So the thing about Clint Eastwood is too that he earlier tried to come out with a movie about World War II, 2 movies in fact, back to back, Flags of Our Fathers and Letters to Iwo Jima, where it was gray. You know, the bad guys weren't all bad, the good guys weren't all good, and nobody went to see them.
Yeah.
They got good reviews.
Sure.
But here you had a story that has an identifiable good guy and identifiable bad guys, and whether that dovetails with reality, well, that's Hollywood.
One of the things that I've noted that I think is perhaps worth discussing about this, Cal, is the fact that this isn't a war movie per se, where you think of, Platoon or things like that. This is a story about a man who served in war, then came home, and the aftermath. This is a true story. So I want to get your take on this controversy.
Well, I think more than any of the other movies that have been kind of done in the last decade on that war or Afghanistan, he's more of a 3-dimensional character. You get much of a sense of what he was up to, which is the larger part of the movie. I mean, him coming home and that piece of it is not the central component of it. But you do get some shots of him in PTSD and how he was dealing with it, and how we know people are affected by PTSD. He's far more of a complete character in this movie than, say, Jeremy Renner was in Hurt Locker. I mean, you got a bit of a sense of that with him in sort of the shopping mall sequence there when he's going around and he was completely lost and he didn't feel back really at home until he got back in the battlefield. I don't think that's this particular character. I mean, he did find a way to come home and to actually be at home and be engaged with his family at the end, which is the real, sort of tragedy. I'm not going to do spoiler alert.
No,
I'm not going to talk about what ends up happening to him, although it's pretty well known.
I think it's interesting that part of his addressing his PTSD was to write a book about it,
right,
which this movie is based on, but which goes unmentioned in the movie. I mean, it's kind of strange.
Yeah, they never talk about the writing process, never doing it. And the book is fairly controversial because he claims a bunch of things in the book that they don't even talk about in the movie that people have sort of pushed back on. But
may not have happened.
Yeah, but with any human being in any situation, there's going to be critics and there's going to be people that people basically filter their reaction to this movie through what their personal agenda is.
Sure.
So I look at a guy like Michael Moore and I say to myself, are we surprised that Michael Moore, a person who depends on people defending his right to go out there and present these controversial opinions, to be the person that sort of snaps back at this stuff. Or, Seth Rogen as well, you didn't mention it, but also had a tweet.
We have his tweet actually. It's a bit, rich in irony considering what happened with the interview.
It's so ridiculous because, I mean, if you actually saw Inglourious Bastards and saw the sequence that he's talking about, there's really, apart from them, there's two snipers. There's no really any relation between one thing and the other. And I think Seth is just being glib and not thinking things through. And you got to understand that when you criticize these kinds of things, you're talking about real people who have done real things for their country. I don't think Michael Moore could get through the PT test. If these guys had picked up, if these guys had actually picked up a weapon and gone off and done what this character did, or what many of us do, who have been involved in the military, I might take them more seriously.
Well, I think so too. But but even the clip that we showed, Jim, that was clearly a very real struggle that. The character, but he was a real life man, Chris Kyle.
Sure.
He saw the kid. That's his job. He's an American sniper. He's there to take out the enemy.
They
and
kind
he
of
picks it
toned
up.
down the if you've read the book, he kind of reveled in it a little bit, and maybe that was his way of overcompensating for things. But he did things like say he shot a couple of burglars, killed them, which there's no evidence that ever happened. He talked about shooting people in Katrina. I mean, he was a storyteller as well. But if you think back to movies like A Beautiful Mind, John Nash had some pretty ugly sides, and they didn't fit into the narrative of the movie. And so Chris Kyle was probably a very complicated guy, but that doesn't really fit, as I say, into the narrative. People want to see a war movie.
Yeah. Well, and I find that so many of these stories, we talk about post-traumatic stress disorder so much more now because, Cal, we have a new generation of vets. It's not what we remember seeing in World War. We have no more World War I vets, very few World War II vets, but it is the Afghan War. It is what happened in Iraq. It will be for those who may at some point have to go fight ISIS or Boko Haram or whatever it may be. It's a different generation of those who suffer from PTSD. It's a very different perspective. That's why I thought this movie was so fascinating, because it addresses it to its own Hollywood degree, ostensibly head on, and then the reaction and the result of what happened, Mr. Kyle.
Yeah, I think it does, and I mean, I think you and I have talked about these kinds of things a fair bit here and in other places. Afghanistan and Iraq are very different kinds of wars than a lot of the veterans that we're sort of used to dealing with. Maybe Vietnam is a little bit more similar to it, in the sense that there's no front lines. Wherever you were under danger, 24/7 when you were there. It's not a situation where people are going and deploying until the war is over, which is what they more or less used to do. They're going in, they're coming out. So you get this, the situation where, people, the ability to be able to manage that transition from the battlefield back, and then from being at home and back to the battlefield again. People just get lost in this.
You re-upped repeatedly.
Yeah, it's just
which is unusual.
Yeah, it's a situation. I mean, in the U.S., for example, they had the stop loss program, which you probably remember, where they would bring them back, and they're ready to leave, and then they just turn them around and send them back again. So, and these are conflicts that are going on for 10 years and more, and so they look like very different things than they used to look like. The other thing is that I thought this was very well done in American Sniper at the beginning. You get a sense of some of the complex choices that these guys have to make, and the fact that some of these choices, in terms of their the morality that they may have grown up with, or the situations that they may have faced in the past, they're just not prepared to deal with this. So when you've got women and children, and everybody's involved in this thing, so and how do you pick the enemy from, they're not wearing uniforms for the most part.
No, absolutely.
And so Chris Kyle was in this situation where he was, and this is one of the things I think that Eastwood does a very good job of the complexity of making those kinds of choices, and the impact, particularly when you've got young children at home, of having to, kind of transition from being in a situation where they're combatants to all of a sudden now they're in your backyard and they're playing with the dog, and how do you manage that?
It was in the book, and it actually appears early in the movie as well.
I want to give you the last word as far as the controversy surrounding this. Look, the Academy is already getting a whole world of pain because they didn't put Selma, and they didn't get a lot more nominations and things like that, Jim. But usually controversy helps these movies, in the sense of, doing better at the award shows. But I'm not sure if that will necessarily be the case. I don't think so. I don't believe that this movie is going to win Best Picture. I don't think it will. And I don't think it was going to anyway.
If you'd asked me a month ago, I'd have been surprised it made it.
Really?
Because there were other ones that didn't. But
Yeah.
and I would have been surprised if Bradley Cooper. But you know what? It's all at a level that's a little lower than Nobility and all the rest of it. Bradley Cooper makes a lot of money. So as producer of the movie, he gets the acclaim if it's named Best Picture. He got the Best Actor nomination. Clint Eastwood got nothing. And I'll inject a little politics there. I think that his appearance at the Republican National Convention probably has a little bit to do with that.
With the fact of not getting nominated.
His politics were always a little unclear because he was against the war in Iraq and Afghanistan, and he was against the war in Vietnam. He's always been very anti-war. So and occasionally he has backed Democratic candidates. It's only in recent years he's made it clear that he's a Republican.
Well, it did break box office records, $90 million and growing. So go see American Sniper. It's going to be interesting, to say the least.